The stream claims to be live. So, hello everybody. Jerzy Drozd, cartoonist and teaching artist, and found myself with the chance to draw for a little bit. Actually, scheduled drawing time. And I thought, well, I knew I had to work on my analog drawing stuff. Oh, look at that! There's one of my eraser refills is in my watercolors. That's funny. Last week, I tried live streaming while I was inking on paper with my laptop, and it was not awesome. So I did a little research, found out some fixes that I could do to try to get my live stream a little bit more smooth. Let's see if we can do this without dropped frames. See if it looked less tax on the processor. Since I was drawing anyway, I thought, well, why not test out this, see if I was correct in what I did to fix this. So I was actually going to do a warm-up drawing a la the art drops that I used to do back when I lived in Michigan, and I went to when I was part of a bowling league. And once a week, I would sit down and you know, do a game of bowling with my team, and while in between turns, I would quickly dash off a quick little pen and ink drawing with some watercolor on it, and then I'd hide the drawing someplace in the bowling alley. I always tried to hide it in a place where kids would find it, but anyway, I haven't done that in a long time, and you know, doing public art drops is probably a little bit problematic right now as we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know, maybe, who knows. Are you as likely to pick up something that you find on the ground, a little piece of art? So anyway, warm-up drawing, and if I have time, a little bit of inking of some of the comics pages that I have left ink. I think I have 4 pages of pencils over there that need to be inked. So going through the tools, we have our Pentel twist erase pencil that I've had for many years now, filled with, what is it, non-photo blue pen? It's not non-photo blue lead. It is Nano Dia blue lead. Believe it or not, a student turned me on to this stuff, and it's just a mechanical lead, just like you'd get from Pentel or anyplace else. It's a blue lead, but it erases so darn clean. I've never seen anything like it. I've been using non-photo blue lead or blue lead in my mechanical pencils for 21 years now, and this is the best I've ever experienced in terms of, like, it's kind of a dark blue, but it erases very clean. All the blue goes away if you have to erase it. So it's Uni 0.5 millimeter Nano Dia color blue. You can find it on jet pens or any art supply place. So that's in this pencil. I also have a 0.7 millimeter Pentel twist erase. They don't make these anymore, but this is the pencil that I used when I first discovered it in high school, and I fell in love with it. So when I found out they weren't making it anymore, I bought as many as I could, and I really did. I bought, like, I don't know, several dozen, figuring that, okay, well, that'll get me through the rest of my life. So I have a 0.7 blue, 0.7 graphite, 0.5 graphite, 0.5 blue. Graphites, you can go in there. And then I've got my click eraser, Pentel click eraser that I've had for many years now. And then I've got my brush pens. Come on, brush pens. Everything is in this really cool Transformers pencil case that I had made for me by a store on Etsy, Dang Argyle. If you want to get some really cool pencil cases, that's the place to go. Anyway, where's the rest of my... I need these, my water pens, and the other brush pen. So what I'm going to do is do a quick little warm-up watercolor drawing / painting, and pencil, ink it, paint it, and then once my hands are all warmed up, I will get to inking some comics. Oh, and then of course the watercolors. Yeah, so there's my little travel watercolor kit I've been using for several years now, and actually got this for me for the holidays one year. And they're the colors that are inside, and then you open it up, and there's the little pans. I think these 3 are gouache, and the rest is watercolor. These are little mixing areas. And another thing I like about it, it's got this cool little ring on the back, so you can put it on your finger and hold it in your hand while you're painting. Gosh darn it, and the paints always fall out of their spots. Green, you go there. Brown, you go there. Okay, so let's get started. What am I gonna do? How about I'm gonna do a little Baron von Bear drawing, because I've been thinking about my old friend Baron von Bear a lot. I had this sort of image when I was on my run this morning. Some kind of weird tower type dealie with like an implied staircase, but not really. I didn't really spend a lot of time visualizing it, but I had this idea that it was like somehow like almost like a mountain that was cut into like little segments of cake that were all shifted. Just a quick little image that popped into my head, and I made a mental note. Hang on to that, pal. That could be something that could go into the book someday, or at least make a cool warm-up drawing. And already I don't like the top of it. Let's fix that. I'm about to show you how awesome this lead is, as I keep doing this ad for jet pens. Watch how clean this comes off. I'm just very lightly scrubbing it. It's gone. Hardly a mark left. Okay. And I had this idea of, and this actually is from a sketch that I did years ago for Sketchbook Summer. Anybody remember that? Brandon Dayton. This drawing of like Boulder and Fleet running away from a millipede. I had this idea of like some kind of like cursed ghost millipede type dealie. Something that's not quite a millipede, but something like a millipede. We don't like things that have lots of legs, right? We don't like things with carapaces. Here's our little bear hero. So we're going to do a better job of that. Now, OBS is telling me that there's no drop frames. My CPU usage is way lower than it was before, and it's consistently saying 30 frames a second. So, but let me know if it gets a little bit jerky. I mean, I guess I can just watch the video at the end. Like after it's done. I mean, what am I going to do? What am I going to do if it's not great? I guess I could stop the stream and stop wasting everybody's time. Oh, hey Chris, good to see you. Nope, not doing crayon today. I haven't, I haven't done that in a while. And actually, my wife Ann got me, because once I got hooked on using watercolor, it's so funny. I was making so many arguments for myself that, like, no, I'm not a painter. I'm a cartoonist. I don't color with paint. Only real artists do that. Oh my gosh, that's revealing, right? So I got hooked on using crayons, and I think that part of it was the challenge of using the tool and making sort of trying to use what people would consider to be a lowbrow tool and get some like maximum benefit and maximum use out of it. It was part of that. Part of it is like, this is a tool that's appropriate to me as an artist. But I really did enjoy like mixing crayon, like using my thumb and blending the colors and everything. I gotta fix this guy. This does not look menacing. So Anne got me, what are they called? Crayon de Arche, I think is the way they're pronounced. You can get them at Blick, and it's a crayon that is a watercolor. I mean, they literally look like crayons, and you rub them on the way you would with crayon. Then you take a water brush like this to it and blend it. And man, talk about vibrant color. I mean, super vibrant color. However, I think I prefer using the old-fashioned pans of watercolor. I have both. I use them both, but I feel like this. So we need this head to be at an angle to make it look menacing. I think it needs to have some kind of a mouth. Something that opens. Get to like that primal fear that we feel when we see something could eat us. That childlike fear. Yeah, the crayon de arches are great for traveling because it's a nice flat tin, right? I mean, this is pretty darn convenient, but let's face it, it's the size of like a Generation 1 iPod, which it's funny to say that like that's even inconvenient because that was considered like such a achievement 20 years ago. It's like, oh, you have 1,000 songs in your pocket. Anyway, but you know, like we're accustomed to thinner, more pocketable stuff now. So the crayon de arches are great for like just slipping into your bag. They're really great for on-the-go drawing. I think the amazing size of a Zune. That's a deep cut. Oh, the Zune in gravy brown. Why don't you want it, everybody? But I think also the crayon de arche is like something I didn't do with them enough, and I think if I went back and tried a little bit more, I'd probably enjoy it. Is like I didn't like it's easier to mix my colors on these areas, whereas like with the crayon de arches, there's no palette. So if I had a palette that I could mix the colors on, I got really used to mixing my colors that way. Oops. So we got our odd slices of rock, this weird layer cake of rock, and there's Baron von Bear leaping to the top. And let's see, I forget which colors go where. I know that I think violet is there. I know that that's orange, and green and blue are up here. So violet is the actions wisp. So let's see if I can make my life miserable by trying to do a lot of straight edge drawing with a watercolor and a pen. I'll do something with the background color here. Anyway, this is just a warm-up drawing. Let's not get ourselves too worked up about it. Joseph had a brown Digimon as a kid. Never had a Zune though. I believe that brown was the most popular color. Digimon as in like the Tamagotchi type, like digital animal that you keep in a you take care of kind of thing. I have to lift my glasses for a second. And I pray that these pens are watercolor. I think they are. Or watercolor, waterproof. The Staedtler pigment liner. Nah, oh, Tamagotchi battling devices. That's right, that's right. Digimon, digital monsters. Oh, why did I decide to work small today? This is just a warm-up drawing I'm doing before I dive into some inking. I realized, so I've been doing this little sort of reflection on my Instagram, looking at the past decade of my artistic development. And in the recent entry I did, which was for 2016, I found, as I was going through my photo albums, I realized, oh my gosh, there's a lot of art drop drawings here that I did when I was on a bowling league. I realized that I missed doing these little watercolor and crayon experiments, test driving ideas, being playful, trying to test myself to come up with a workable idea and composition on the fly without overthinking it. I mean, that's really how I did the art drops at the bowling alley. Was I would show up, drop my bag, pull out my art tools, pick a ball that I was going to use for the night. And then while I would talk with my teammates, I would sit here and do just what I'm doing right now. And just try to sort of tap into that back of the brain kind of business. And also race the clock, because I would do the drawing between turns. And bowling only lasted, I think we would play 3 games, or was it 2 games? 2 or 3 games, either way. It would take somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 hours to play. So I'd have 2 hours, roughly speaking, all told. But I'm also drawing in between turns, so I got to figure out this drawing like pretty rapidly, and while I'm being distracted by also trying to socialize and play a game of bowling. I missed that challenge and that sort of like friendly pressure. And I also really enjoyed hiding the drawings in the bowling alley, hoping that a kid would find it. Although some of my friends would point out to me, is like, well, but as a parent, I don't know if I'd be cool with my kid just picking up some drawing off the ground. I would always try to like very thoughtfully and purposefully hide it, like in a place where a kid would find it, like near the crane game or something like that, like leaning up against the glass. So it's like it was put there on purpose. It wasn't dropped. It doesn't belong to anybody. It's there for you. And in retrospect, what I should have done is like actually put like a little note in the back says, congratulations, you just found an art drop. This is something that an artist left in the world for you, kind of thing. I didn't do that, and I should have. Anyway, I haven't done it in a long time for obvious reasons, because we can't go places right now, so I got mixed feelings about me leaving art in the world for people to find during a pandemic. So now I'm just doing this just because I missed the experience of working really tiny on some watercolor paper, trying to come up with an idea real fast and seeing if I can pull it off. So that's the reason why. Thank you for hanging out with me while I do it. The other reason I'm live streaming is because I'm testing out, I made some adjustments to my OBS, Open Broadcast Software, Broadcast Studio. Because I streamed last Thursday, the 7th of January, and it was really bad. I mean, like I was having a lot of drop frames. There was a lot of jerkiness in the video. And so I was trying to figure out what was wrong with my setup, because I'm actually using my laptop on my drafting table right now. My old drafting table that I've had since I was 14 years old. And instead of like my tower that I used to do things like Blade into Artcast. So I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what did I set up wrong with this? Figured it out, I think, because now I'm getting consistently 30 frames a second, only 24% of the CPU is being used, no dropped frames, so I think it's fixed. I wanted to test it before I went live tomorrow. So I'm going to stream tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's pretty good. You know, I was already. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a germaphobe, but like putting my feet in other people's shoes and putting my fingers in those bowling balls, and like my some of my teammates would like eat food with their hands. They'd get like chicken wings and stuff, and I'd be like, you know, you're handling those bowling balls that everybody's handled, right? Um, I can only imagine the shiver that would run down my spine if I stuck my fingers in a bowling ball hole and felt something in there. So, Chris, whether you meant to or not, you just pranked me in my imagination. Another thing that makes it, another reason to work small today from this warm-up drawing is that it's easy to keep this all on camera and keep this in plain view. Whereas some of the pages that I have to ink, I have to keep turning them around. They're 11 by 17. Oh, Chris, that is a more positive spin, right? I'd put my finger in the holes of the bowling ball. And I'd be like, oh, oh. And then I'd be like, what is it? Is it a bone? No, it's a drawing. It's a really pretty drawing by Chris Kawajua. This has turned out to be a little bit more ambitious than I intended, but we'll do my best. This. I'm going to try my other pen, get it really nice and saturated. Yeah, I know. I kind of overdid it. Like I said, this was an idea that occurred to me this morning when I was running, and I was like, well, running? That's a lofty word for what I was doing this morning. I was moving faster than walking and huffing and puffing and sweating like I was going to die. And this image kind of came to mind, like as I was thinking about Baron von Bear and what I'd like to do with that story. And so I thought, well, just as I sat down to do this, I was like, okay, maybe I'll do that. Yeah, the idea I think came from, I was just like sort of ruminating on things that creep us out, because for anybody who's read Baron von Bear, it's meant to be like a very approachable spooky story. I would submit that's intended to be, you know, an elevator pitch would be a horror story meets Hello Kitty. But not in any kind of like tongue-in-cheek sort of like, oh, you see what we did there kind of way. Just more like, because like when I was a little kid, I loved scary stories, but I would frequently, and maybe you've had experiences like this, I'd come up against my limitations, right? I'd be like, oh, I'm watching The Shining. I'm 12. It says it's a scary movie. I like scary movies. Oh, I shouldn't have watched The Shining. Yeah, and so like as I was jogging along thinking about this idea of like what's creepy to us, I was like, well, okay, let's go through a few ideas, like asymmetry, odd numbers of appendages, right? Like one of the things what is that movie with Amy Adams with the aliens? The Arrival? Is that what it's called? Like I really like the alien design in that. Like they were like kind of mysterious, and they had like didn't look like they had like an even number of appendages. Love that idea. In which one is it? I think it's Metroid Echoes. There's the Ing, and they have 5 legs instead of 4. So like odd numbered things, lots and lots of appendages. Just wanted to think of something that like just like taps into that like primal part of our brain. There's a really neat part in Lewis's book Paralandra where the hero encounters this multi-legged, segmented creature in this underground lair, and there's this flash of realization that dawns on the hero as he's encountering it, where he realizes that, wait a minute, why should it be horrific for something to have a different shaped body than anything else? And like when he looks at the creature again through that lens, suddenly it just turns into this odd looking thing. It literally turns from a monster to a curiosity. And I've always loved that reframing that he did there. So it's something I hope I get to play with in this story. Have I watched Alien Worlds on Netflix? Interesting character design based on different evolution constraints. Oh, that sounds fascinating. Yeah, I'm a fan of that kind of thinking. Like in the original Carl Sagan Cosmos, when he does this like thought experiment about what life might look like on Jupiter, right? Based on the constraints of the environment. What could exist there, right? And he comes up with a pretty interesting hypothesis. And it gets me wondering if like that would be like part of the key to a peaceful encounter with an alien species, is having that context. Look, our heads are this way because of these factors in our environment. Oh, okay. You're not a monster then. Here's like a different shaped thing. Going back to that Lewis idea. But I will have to check that out, Chris. I have not seen it. I'll get another pen for this, because I need a slightly drier pen for what I want to do next. Yeah, this is rapidly progressing past warm-up drawing into something else. I promise you, you have my solemn pledge, I'm not going to post this on Instagram and say, here's a little sketch I did. This is a sketch. Yeah, a sketch that took me an hour. Although, I'm super busted on doing that. Little sketch to start the day. 25-minute drawing. Okay. Might be time for watercolors. I was actually going to say time to save my work before moving on to the next step. Do I have a purple pen? I do. I'm going to very lightly erase. Control S. I know we've all been there, right? Or we Control Z when we're working on paper. Muscle memory. I'm going to leave some of that blue from the path of the violet wisp for obvious reasons, because I'm not going to be able to remember where I put it otherwise. The rest of the pencils can go pretty much away. I'm going to get a little bit bigger eraser. Oh, hey there, Tom. I saw you comment on one of my other videos the other day, and I've been meaning to respond. Good to hear from you. And yes, I have fond memories of talking about military ranks. I remember you gave me a lot of great advice on like how military ranks work for a story I was working on. Oh my gosh, Chris, yes, pinching to zoom on everything. Yes, I'm there with you. That sucks. That's like what we do now. Okay, I'm gonna let's see if my purple ink is working. It sure is. I'm gonna go in with purple ballpoint pen for this part, because ain't no way I'm doing that with a watercolor brush. Tom, I also remember the story you told me about being in Japan and on those windy cliff tops. And I won't say what happened next, but I remember the story. Thanks, Joseph. Hopefully I don't ruin it when I get to colors. Alright, so these multi-pens, I love them so much, guys. I really do. They're such a silly thing, but I love having lots of colors on one device. I guess I'm just like kind of hooked on the idea of one device having everything I need. So I like got hooked on using a brush. Okay, blue, you go there. Alright, well, let's see if I can paint this thing. So, water brushes, you've seen these. Water chamber, a little brush on the end. I'll start by doing some background stuff here. Let's get some mood. Let's get some mood. How about okay, Tom, you went there. I wasn't sure if you'd be okay with me sharing that story, but yes, the Insta-glider, opening your poncho on the top of a cliff in a windy, typhoon-like day, and what happens next? Oh, I got a spammer. Let's add to block list. Yeah, as I understand things, that's what happened with old Tom. Is on top of a cliff, high winds, open the poncho, and just like Batman, whoosh. All right, let's get some purple in here. Of course, I could be messing the story up. That was some years ago when it was told to me. the shot. Make sure this gives him the shot. With that, I do remember. I remember that incident did some work on your knees. So that, like, I guess that's where we turn to the kids and say, don't try this at home. See, we've got a lot of red and blue in here. What color am I going to make this little mountain range, right? Let's get some contrast. If anybody's curious, I'm working on a Canson watercolor cold press block. Joseph, I'm certain that Becca has covered some of these in her art snacks, right? At Natto Soup on YouTube. These watercolor blocks, because she does a ton of watercoloring. Not that I'm asking you to look it up right now, necessarily. Just assuming. Okay, so we've got a red light source. And that means there's going to be some elements of green in the shadow. Get some green in there. 2 green. Mix your colors, Jerzy. Well, I'm sure if I was talking to Becca, she would probably agree with me that there's this blocks are nice because everything's all glued together, so I don't have to worry about like warping. Paper doesn't warp while I'm working. I'm getting it all saturated and soaked. I'm pointing people at Becca's channel because I know she talks about this a little bit more detailed than I do. I'm just trying to race the clock, get this thing done. Okay, let's get a little bit of... Oh, 2 red. Mix your colors, Jerzy. Maybe it might be time to break out the other brush. see if I can get a little bit more green in that shadow too. It's my watercolor hands clicking around. I don't have super awesome sound right now. So I'm working off of a blue snowball mic. Are these original platinum brush pens or is it pilot pens? You know, I don't know. These are like super cheapo water pens. I don't know what the brand is on them actually, now that I look at it. The pens I was using before, these are Pentel color brush pens. But I don't know what these water pens are called, to tell you the truth. Get a little bit of black in there. Seriously, I think these were gotten at like a Dick Blick, and it was like clearance kind of thing, because they're meant to just be like my hocking around pens or brushes. The mic I'm using, Tom, is a little less fancy than the one I use when I'm at my tower, my PC tower. It's just like, it's like a USB mic. It's a serviceable mic, but it's not as good as when I'm using my Shure SM58 fancy, you know, studio mic. So I know it's picking up like little desk noises like that. Normally you wouldn't hear that, but it's not the end of the world. It's like we're watching somebody draw. Is that really that big of a deal if you can hear some desk noises? But all right, what color am I gonna make this character? This weird millipede type dealie. Let's start by just doing the inside of his mouth, and I'll think about it while I do that. Part of me is thinking purple. Purple with an aqua belly. That seems toyetic, right? Get a little bit yellow in there. Purple always makes you think of Sega for some reason. Like the Sega game system or Sega from Street Fighter? And I actually spend a lot of time talking about purple in my comics classes. I talk about how, you know, in the movie Inside Out, fear was purple. Why was fear purple? Well, purple's the color of mystery. Wizards wear purple. And then like you know, a lot of Disney villains are caked in purple. And like I do this exploration of color opposites, and it's by no means academic. It is nothing you can write a paper about and win any awards, but it's a framework for thinking about how color works and how color makes us feel things. And I talk about how, like, well, purple's also the color of nobility, because once upon a time only the rich and powerful could make the color purple. And the funny thing about being rich and powerful is you get to write your own story as to how you are as a person. So you get to say, we are noble people. So purple became associated with nobility and fealty and honesty, and like the Pope wears an amethyst ring, for crying out loud, right? So it's like an opposite kind of deal, where it's like it's both noble and it's mysterious and dangerous. Where's my purple? Where to be my purple. It's so funny when I find out that like people have like strong feelings between Nintendo and Sega. I somehow managed to grow up blissfully aware of the console war distinction. I had no idea that that was a thing. I found out later when I think it was when I got to high school in the late 80s, early 90s. I found out that there were people who like really had strong opinions about it. I love video games, but I'm not good enough at them to have really big feelings about it. I like the games I like, and I don't care where I find them, but I think part of that is due to the fact that I really stink at them. Hawkeye wore purple, and don't forget the Hulk's pants. Yeah, that purple came from diluted royal blue from extinct... Oh, is that where it came from? Diluted royal blue from extinct snail? I figured you would know, Tom. I knew that its history was that it was, like, not the easiest thing to make, but I didn't know the exact details on, like, how it was made. Almost there. Almost there. I might put some more darkness in that background. I think I need some more, a wash of a dark color. My warm-up drawing became a little bit more involved than I intended. And I think those creatures' legs needs to be some kind of yellow. No, you didn't mention that, Tom. That's awesome. Congratulations. Any particular piece of history that you like specialize in or are especially interested in? I'm gonna add like a little bit of a sickly green to these legs too. Just want to get some really bright yellow on it first so that the legs stand out a little bit more than the underbelly. Okay, now let's get that bluish green in there. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, that doesn't surprise me, Tom. I mean, that was something that I do remember you having a lot of passion for and a lot of knowledge of back when we worked together. I think I got enough here to do the Baron's suit. How long have I been going here? Almost an hour. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Tom. Teaching is one of those things I feel like got slammed pretty darn hard by this past year. If that's indeed what you did with your degree. I feel like we're all in for a tough year of trying to find new ways to hustle to make things work. It's like when we start talking about like, oh, thank goodness, it's 2021, it's a new year. I'm like, well, yeah, that means that it's reacting to the past year, building upon, hopefully, what we encountered, but... Alright, this needs some more value. I need to do something here. I'm getting way too caught up in this thing. Oh wow, that's awesome. I started teaching on the side. I don't have a degree in teaching, but I work as I always introduce myself as a teaching artist, which is to say a person who teaches the art that they make. Although here in Ohio they're doing like an accreditation program where it's like I can join this teaching artist roster, so I can like have some kind of training and professional development to prove to teachers that I'm not a sophist or a classroom clown just here to entertain their children, but I can actually teach. But like, man, did that ever teach me respect for the profession? I mean, being a person in a young person's life who is not their parents, who tells them that they matter, is like, that is like one of the greatest things in the world you could do for people. So hats off to you for doing that, Tom. That's awesome. And to do it all over the world too, that's really cool. Okay, now I'm going to get some more value in this shading here. So I'm going to go to the color that I made. I'm going to add some black to it. Maybe a little bit dark blue, more of that brown. Oh, I live in Columbus now. I moved here about just under 2 years ago. Yes, yeah, it'll be 2 years ago in February. My wife got a job at the Ohio State University working for the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum. I lived in Ann Arbor for 15 years before that, and I loved it. But then the time came, she got the job at OSU, so we had to move. Yeah, Chris, I mean, that's exactly right. Is that, like, a really good teacher... I just, and I knew that from my own biography, but I didn't think about it until I started working with young people, and then they would come back to talk to me years later, and they would say something that I told them, and they would say something that would sound like profoundly wise, and I'd be like, that's really great, where'd you hear that? And like, you told me that. Oh, Athens, Ohio. I have not been around the state enough to really appreciate all it has to offer, although I did go to Hocking Hills, of course. But it's like, just as my wife and I were starting to really like get around and get to see the state, the pandemic hit. So now we're hunkered down like everybody else. But yeah, I have very clear memories of an 8th grade teacher who like was one of the first people to really take me seriously as a person. I didn't think that like my interest in art and comics was, and on top of anything, he was my physical science teacher. Mr. Brandon was his name. I need to look him up because he was one of the first teachers who like didn't, like when he found out that what I wanted to do with my life is I wanted to make comic books and make art and stories. He leaned in and he was genuinely interested in it, and he started giving me like some ideas on like, way to frame it up and think about hard work and how it builds on itself and so on. And it was just, especially at a time, you gotta remember this was the 80s, so like comics were not considered like real reading at that time. And so, yeah, it was profound. It was a big moment for me. And I remembered that for myself, but I never thought that, like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing when I'm teaching. So I'm doing that for kids too. Now I take that responsibility pretty darn seriously. It's not always easy. Time will tell you that. But what else can you do? Except take it seriously. Alright. Let's try to work in some contrast. Oh yeah. So I'm doing actually a residency now in a town just south of Columbus, Westfall. And the thing I told the teachers when they invited me to come to their school and visit with their kids for 10 weeks, I said, you know, when I was a kid, my 10th grade teacher, my sociology teacher, literally called my parents into the class, or called it to the school and said, like, I'm worried about your son. And I said, because he draws Spider-Man all over his homework, and I think he's not going to turn out very well. And he was trying to do me a solid. He was trying to, like, help me out, right? Like, do, like, this intervention to keep me from becoming a monster. But that's where we were at that time. That's some hard-won wisdom, Tom. Okay, I think I've got something here. I think this is coming along okay. I think it's just about done. Let's get my smaller brush to get some of those interior details. Yeah, Steven. In retrospect, that sounds very silly, right? Doesn't it? I mean, but at the time, it was like... And he wasn't the only teacher to think that was going to turn out to be a really rotten kid. It was such a frowned upon activity where I grew up, and in the time I grew up. Put in a little bit more shading detail in the cave behind. So it's not just a color. You get this far into a drawing, fellow artists chime in. I know you agree. This is where it starts to really feel nervous. But gosh, I hope I don't totally tank it now. Put all this effort into this thing. You get a hunch. Maybe I can add a little bit more thing to it. It'll add just like a little bit of depth and volume to it. Or I could totally just put the whole drawing in the drawing toilet. I think that's it, right? I can let this one go now, can't I? Come on, Jerzy, let it go, let it go, let it go. It's gonna be okay. You don't have to win any awards for this one. It's just this little drawing that you're doing for your pleasure of it. Don't take the pleasure out by trying to turn it into something it's not. I need to put a little bit of darkness in the creature's mouth. Then I'm done, I swear. I swear I'm done after that. Oh, wrong brush. and then I'll be just a little bit over an hour, and I can close out the stream. Thanks everybody for hanging out with me while I do this. It is so nice to actually have company. Takes me back to the days when I used to live with a bunch of guys and we would stay up all night drawing comics. That was fun. All right, do I sign it? Sure, why not? Well, there we are. Reartist needs someone looking over the shoulders saying hands off. Oh, let me get in the shot. There's, oh, come on. There we go. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out while I did this little painting. And I'm going to be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Actually, I can show you what I'm going to be inking. I'm going to be inking page 7 of the Captain Seriously comic that I got to finish before the end of this month. So I'm going to be inking this by hand, on paper, by hand. Use your hands and use a computer too. Come on. So thanks again, everybody, and I'll see y'all next time. Until then, I've been Jerzy Drozd, jdrozd.com, Jerzy Drozd on Instagram. Okay, bye.